So, there's some huge breaking news coming out of South America. Explosions have just rocked the Venezuelan capital, right in the middle of the night. And social media, it's blowing up, with unconfirmed reports of U.S. military action. So today, we're going to unpack all of it. We'll break down exactly what we know so far about these strikes on Caracas.
Okay, so here's our game plan for making sense of all this. First, we'll look at the explosions themselves, what actually happened on the ground. Then, we're going to rewind a bit to see how we even got to this point. You know, the path to escalation. After that, we'll dig into the official stories from both sides, check out the immediate fallout, and wrap up with the huge, massive questions that are still hanging in the air.
All right, let's start at the very beginning of this thing. We're talking about a major South American capital being literally jolted awake by the sounds of war.
And listen to this. This quote from journalists who were right there on the ground in Caracas. It just perfectly captures the raw shock of the moment. I mean, this isn't some dry military report. It's the real physical experience of being in a hotel room that is literally shaking from how loud these blasts were. Just incredible.
And yeah, you've got to understand, this wasn't just one single random explosion. Eyewitnesses are reporting a whole series of them, a coordinated event that kicked off right around 2 a.m. And it wasn't just in the capital either. We're getting reports of low-flying aircraft and explosions from multiple cities.
So those initial reports painted a picture of, well, coordinated chaos, if that makes sense. The targets? They were definitely strategic. We're talking major military hubs like the main army base and an air base. But the impact? The whole city felt it. Neighborhoods suddenly plunged into darkness, air raid sirens wailing, and then you have these unconfirmed but terrifying reports of Chinook helicopters. That, right there, is what sparked fears that a full-on ground operation was next. Now, obviously, something this big doesn't just happen out of the blue, right? It doesn't happen in a vacuum. To really understand how we got the bombs dropping on Caracas, you've got to look back at the last few months. There's been this steady buildup of military pressure in the region. And you can see the whole progression laid out right here. It really started at sea back in September of 2025, with U.S. strikes on boats they claimed were smuggling drugs. Then it ramped up. U.S. forces started seizing Venezuelan oil tankers in the Caribbean. The first big jump onto Venezuelan soil, that was in December, with a drone strike on a port. And all of that, it was all building up to this moment, the airstrikes on the capital at the very start of 2026.
And to give you a sense of just how serious this buildup was, get a load of this number, 20%. That's roughly the percentage of the entire U.S. Navy that was deployed to the Caribbean in the months leading up to this. That is an absolutely massive amount of firepower, and it was a pretty clear signal that a major decision was on the table.
Okay, so why? What's the official reason for this pretty dramatic escalation? Well, this is where the story just splits right down the middle. You're about to hear two completely different realities, depending on who's doing the talking. All right, here are the two competing narratives laid out side by side. On the one hand, you have the United States. They're framing this whole thing as a massive police action. They say President Maduro is the head of a narco-terrorist group called the Cartel of the Suns, and this is about stopping them. But from Venezuela's point of view, no way. They see this as a straight-up military invasion, a violation of their sovereignty, and an attempt to overthrow their government.
And you know, the official U.S. justification goes even deeper than just targeting a few bad guys. Their whole argument, which you can see in this quote, is that Maduro's entire regime, the whole state, is basically a criminal enterprise that's just kept afloat on drug money. That claim, that's the foundation for the entire legal basis for these strikes. A very controversial legal basis, I should add.
So, the explosions happen. The world is watching. And everyone's waiting for the official statements. So let's look at what was said, and maybe more importantly, what wasn't said in the immediate aftermath. Okay, so Venezuela's response came in three parts. The first two were pretty much what you'd expect, right? A strong official condemnation of the military aggression, and then declaring a national state of emergency. But that third step, that was the real surprise. President Maduro came out and publicly said he was ready to sit down and negotiate with Washington. And on the U.S. side? A total wall of silence. The White House and the Pentagon have flat out refused to confirm or deny anything. So you have this really weird situation where journalists are citing high-level sources saying, yeah, it was us, but officially it's just no comment. The whole thing is basically an open secret. And this might be one of the most wild statements to come out of this whole crisis. I mean, think about it. Right after a military attack on his capital, President Maduro isn't just offering to talk, he's offering business deals to American investors. He's saying, come on in, the oil is ready for you.
It's this incredible mix of defiance and, well, maybe desperation. A real olive branch being extended while the smoke is still clearing.
So if you zoom out and look at the bigger picture, you'll see Venezuela is pretty much on its own here. Its neighbor, Colombia, is already pointing the finger directly at the United States. Militarily, everyone agrees Venezuela's army is just no match for U.S. forces. And maybe most importantly, their old friends, Russia and China, well, they've been backing away lately. It seems like the cost of supporting Maduro's just getting too high. So that leaves Caracas with not a lot of powerful friends to call for help.
And that pretty much brings us right up to this moment. This whole situation is moving so fast, and honestly, these first strikes have left us with way more questions than answers.
Right now, everything is just shrouded in a fog of uncertainty. You know, what was this? Was it a one-off warning shot? Or is this just the beginning of something much, much bigger? Is a ground invasion coming? How are the people of Venezuela going to react to all this? And when is the U.S. actually going to say something official? These are the huge questions hanging over everything.
And here's the classic question you always have with this kind of foreign intervention. Is this military action going to weaken the Venezuelan leader, or will it actually backfire and cause the population to rally behind him against a common enemy? It can go either way, and honestly, the answer to that question is going to define Venezuelans' future for years.
And that really leaves us with the fundamental trillion-dollar question here. By calling this a fight against a narco-terrorist group instead of a nation, the U.S. is blurring a really old, really important line. It makes you wonder, right? Where is the line between one country fighting crime and committing an act of war against another? That's the question this whole event forces us to ask, and right now, nobody has the answer.